George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Listen, this Saturday, November the 20th at the Bethany Baptist Church from 11 to 1 p.m., 149 Beatty Street, we will have a conversation about education in Syracuse. And a number of groups are coming together to have that conversation with you. We're pleased to be joined by Drake Harrison, president of the 100 Black Men of Syracuse. Also joining us, Reggie Stevens. He is the vice president of the Higher Learning Educational Network. And of course, Pastor Phil Turner, who is the pastor of the Bethany Baptist Church in Syracuse, my pastor as well. Shout out to Pastor Turner. And the conversation forum, we're inviting you as a community to come out and hear what the issues are regarding education. And we know what they are, right? But in particular, we want to talk about why we're having this forum today and what are the ways that we can understand how our children are being educated, especially Black and brown students in our Syracuse City School District. What's the data say? And what are some of the groups involved in this group? There'll be presentations that day from Dr. Bernard Gassaway. You met him on this show a few weeks ago. Also, Light of Syracuse, which is Pastor Turner will explain what that is. And Dr. Lester Young, who is the chancellor for the New York State Board of Regents. So a very high-powered panel, including 100 Black Men and the Higher Learning Educational Network. So, Drake, why this conversation now?
Well, as we all are aware, the lack of success, particularly for Black and brown students in urban areas, and Syracuse being one of them, it's time for us to engage. You know, we haven't been on the sidelines, but we've been talking about the issues for literally decades.
Sure.
And we're saying, if not now, when?
Right.
If not us, who? So we decided to get off the sidelines to start engaging in a practical way in helping to change the lives and be, our motto is what they see is what they'll be, to be actively engaged in the process of learning for young Black and brown students in particular, and in these underserved communities. And we want to eliminate that language. You know, I hate to say underserved. When do we get past that?
Right.
Right. When do we stop? You know, we need to, get that phrase or do what we need to do. So that phrase is no longer even used. But it's past time. It's time for us to get to work. And we're in the 21st century, and we do not want our children to keep falling behind in a progressive world that's going faster and faster and faster.
You want everybody to show up at this thing, right? And we're talking community stakeholders. You want everybody to show up at this thing.
Oh, correct. Oh, yeah, everyone. Because this affects all of us.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you said that, the language of underperforming, Reggie, but the data says otherwise. Talk to me.
So when we look at the data specifically around the Syracuse School District, because I've been doing some research around this, and I'm sure most of your audience is aware that the school district put out that, we had this huge increase in graduation rates.
Right.
But you have to really look at what that number means when you're talking about kids graduating from the high school. And so when you really look at that data, you have to keep in mind, this is data that was determined without Regents exams. The kids weren't required to take Regents exams. Now, that doesn't mean that some of the kids didn't take the Regents exam, but the Regents exam didn't count towards them graduating from high school this past year. So what the State Department did was they required, under the federal Every Student Success Act, that there would be 4 Regents exams that would be given. But the students' actual exam grades will post on their official records, maybe not. But the students are not required to pass the exam to meet graduation requirements. That was just for this past year. So of course, we're going to see an uptick in the percentage of students who are graduating because they didn't have to take the Regents exam. Does that mean they're prepared for college? there's no data that shows that. And the Regents exam basically will tell you if students are ready to go to college or not. And since they didn't have to take it, and the ones that did take it, it didn't really count toward graduation. And also, you want to look at the data from the grades 3 through 8 state assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most districts gave some type of assessment last year. Syracuse School District did give an assessment, and some kids did take it, but the assessment doesn't really count. They just want to capture a picture, okay, of what during this pandemic and all of this virtual instruction, what were the outcomes? So looking at the data, and this data is public knowledge. You can go on the NYSCD/data website to pull it up, put in Syracuse School District, and it'll show you the number of students who took the test by grade level, and it gives you two types of data. This is what parents really need to understand. There's participation data and performance data. What you want to look at is the performance data.
Mm-hmm.
And during the summit, I'm gonna break it down a little bit more minute for people, but in a nutshell, maybe about 907 kids took the test, grades 3 through 8, and I'm speaking specifically about ELA now. But when you look at that data, only 20% of the students who actually took the test tested proficient. And that's grades 3, only grades 3. And as you go through the grades, you'll see how it starts to decrease. In grades 4, it was a little uptick, 24% tested proficient. Grade 5, 15% of the students tested proficient. 6, 22. 7th grade, 16% of the students tested proficient who took the test in ELA. And in 8th grade, 20%. Now, when you dig a little deeper, when we're talking about Black and Brown students, I'm just going to pick one grade level, say, for example, 5th grade. Only 9% of the students, African American, tested proficient. Latina, it was 14%. That's disturbing.
Yeah, so it is disturbing. And so you highlighting those statistics is to tell us what? Is it to say this is what's happening with the students? Is it to say fire alarm, 3-alarm blaze? We gotta figure this thing out. What are you trying to get us to understand about these numbers? Because I think, let me just add as context here.
Mm-hmm.
The pandemic, there's a lot of grace that was given to people. So I don't want to put us in a position where we're saying, well, that's pandemic grades, and so we're going to discount them. That's what I'm kind of hearing. And I know that's not what you're doing. So
no.
Put all of that in context for me. Yes.
Okay, let me put it in context for you. So when you look at data, you look at trends.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we go back to 2019, the last time they actually took the test, 2018, 2019, and I'll look at that data real quick for you and give you some numbers. 1 second, my computer's a little slow. The numbers trend the same.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no difference.
Sure.
It's not changing for the students. So in 2018, of all the students in Syracuse School District, and I'm just going to focus on ELA for now, grades 3 through 8, only 15% of the kids were proficient.
Mm-hmm.
In 2019, only 18% of the kids were proficient. Those numbers are alarming. It's not moving that much, and it should be. And what parents need to understand is it's what is being done in the schools that affects what this data looks like. Because this has always been my motto, and I've been in education since 1992. I've done everything from teaching to being a principal, district person, federal funding coordinator, all of the above, and are always the same. They will learn what you put in front of them. They will rise to the occasion. If your expectations are high, children will meet the expectations. Unless they have an identified concern that they need specific assistance with. Other than that, any child can learn, but it depends on who's standing in front of that child if they're going to learn or not, and what they're doing while they're standing in front of those children.
Pastor, hey, I see you nodding in agreement. So what is this date? When you hear this, what does this mean to you?
Well, what it means is that the children are not being approached in a way that is effective for them. It means that the people who are teaching them or attempting to teach them are not in touch with the way that they perceive things, are not in touch with the way that they learn. And as Reggie pointed out, what is their approach? If you approach a child and they see that you believe that they can learn, and they see that you care whether or not they learn, it changes the child's attitude towards learning, because the relationship has to do with the child and the teacher. Okay, it's a relationship. And if you're speaking from a spiritual perspective, my teaching says that teaching is a gift. And so some people have it and some don't. The desire to teach doesn't necessarily mean that you are a great teacher or that you will be a great teacher. All right. There has to be a connection between the child and the student, or the student and the teacher, excuse me. Yeah. So yeah, that's an integral part. And as a people, we have been dealing with the issue of not being involved with the education of Black and brown students. And so, we by and large throughout the nation are perhaps the only ethnic group that completely turns our children over to others to educate. And the result is that it's not ending well. The data, as Reggie pointed out, and the remarks that Drake made, clearly points out that there is a divide between the time a child of color enters the school system and prayerfully the time that if they graduate. So, and we're ready to step in now, as Drake pointed out. The education of a child, as you and I know, and everybody here on this session knows, is a family responsibility. Okay, now we are extending that to the community. All right, we're extending that to the village.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so and the goal is to turn the situation around. All right, to be impactful in a way that prepares our children or our soon to be adults, to prepare them to make a living and to make significant contributions to the community that they live in and to the world. If you're not prepared for that, then there is a continuation of underperformance that impacts poverty, that impacts health, that impacts just a plethora of things that makes that person a lifetime person who is less than sufficient.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Jake Harrison.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what Reggie and Pastor Turner said, because like Reggie has been in education for a very long time. I was in higher ed until I retired last March for 30 years.
I think you're still in it, bro.
But
congratulations. I didn't know you retired.
Yeah, thank you. But anyway, I dealt with a lot of these same kids that come from these underserved communities, right? And Pastor Turner is right, and Reggie's correct. If you set the bar high and provide them with the support, the love, the skill set to help them achieve, they can do remarkable things. To demonstrate that, like for example, I was responsible when I first get in EOP, Liberty Partnership, Education Opportunity Program.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, right. Collegiate Science Technology Entry Program, which stands for CSTEP. I had a National Science Foundation scholarship, right? And what I learned was, and what I taught my team is engage. Don't lower expectations. Keep expectations high, but provide them with the resources and the access, if you will, to achieve. We did so well, and I should say my team did so well, that Onondaga Community College used our students as poster children for the institution.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because these young people who came from these same communities that people didn't think they could achieve went on to attend MIT, right? Went on to attend Syracuse University, went on to attend upstate, medical. And I mean, these students did well. And these kids are talented. And there's hundreds and thousands more if we're provided with the resources early on. And let me tell you what's changing in higher ed, right? In higher ed, when you come into a college, you test for your English and writing levels and your math levels, right? And if you don't do well, they will put you in something called remedial coursework, so you could catch up. You have a semester or two to catch up. And we used to call those empty credits, right? Because those credits did not go toward their graduation, but it kept them financial aid eligible. Well, institutions, because it's not financially viable anymore, are eliminating those remedial courses because it's no longer a benefit to them.
Mm.
Right. So that remediation that took place on that higher level, that's going away because it's like I said, it's no longer financially beneficial to the institution. So it becomes imperative that K through 12, we have to get these kids ready because those opportunities are going to be less and less going forward. Now, private institutions, I was at SUNY, Onondaga Community College, private is different than public, right? Because privates normally have a little bit more money and they can independently make decisions, to help these kids or not. But the point is, why set our children up that they're behind once they leave 12 and they're still doing 9th grade math, or 8th grade reading. Those days are gone. We have to make sure that they're ready and prepared when they graduate from 12th grade.
Talking to Jake Harrison, President, 100 Black Men. Reggie Stevens, he is the Vice President of the High Learning Educational Network, and Pastor Phil M. Turner from the Bethany Baptist Church in the Light of Syracuse Incorporated. Listening to all of you, it strikes me, by the way, for the summit, there's a 2021 Education Summit this Saturday, November the 20th at Bethany. The topics will include the impact of systemic racism, a framework for understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools, and the role that we as community can play in how our children are educated. So Reggie, to you, as I listen to what you all are saying, and Reggie, you've been in all pieces of it, what is the barrier? Because Pastor Turner and my wife, educators, and Drake, you're in higher ed, and I know what their intention is when they go into the classroom, and all the stuff that you say that they need to do and want to do, they are bringing that into the room with them. So what is happening between their intention and the outcome, right? Because something is amiss if you're reading all these statistics that say much hasn't changed in the system.
Right.
So
right.
what I'm trying to figure out intention. I love this. I'm doing this a lot now. Intention versus impact. They have the intent to go in and make sure that, in my wife's case, that everybody is a math genius. But something is getting in the way. From your experience, what is that something?
I think, this is from my experience, the relationship building, like Pastor Turner said. In order for you to get a student to want to perform, they have to first trust you. That's number one. A child is not going to do anything for anybody that they don't trust. Number two, when you look at the people who are standing in front of the children, and I will say this with all due reverence, I think every person who goes into teaching goes into it with the best intention. But sometimes, like Pastor Turner pointed out, sometimes some people aren't equipped with the capacity to teach the audience that's in front of them.
Amen.
And I think the community, the school districts, not just Syracuse, but I'm talking to all of them, sometimes do a disservice because they don't provide the teachers with the right kind of professional development to prepare them to work with the students who are in front of them at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another layer to that. You also have people who go into this profession, and I'm just going to call a spade and keep it real, who will purposely choose to teach in our communities because they know they can do the bare minimum and that's all they have to do. But this is what I say to those people. You choose the school where you want to work. Children don't choose the school where they go.
Okay, so can I just challenge? I don't want to challenge that, but I want to say this. How do we let them get away with that? If they choose to come into our community doing the bare minimum, how are we letting those teachers who have those intentions get away with that?
You have to hold people accountable to do what they're supposed to do. You have to hold the school districts accountable to hold those people accountable to do what they're supposed to do. If you know you have a school where the teachers and the admin are not doing what they're supposed to do or what they need to do, they're probably doing what they're supposed to do based on that contract. But are they doing what they need to do for the students that are in front of them? Now, my contract may say, I need to leave, I can leave at 2:30. But if I know I have students who I need to help after school and I really care about them, I'm not going to leave to 4:30 if I care about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. And it's all about the relationships that people and educators build with those students. But I still have to go back to professional development because we cannot hold teachers at fault for things that they don't know. And unless we teach them how to teach certain demographics of students, because the bottom line, I know we always like to say, well, there's no difference. There is difference. There's difference in how Black and brown people raise their children. There's a difference in how we discipline our children. And there's a difference in how we can get through to those children. And another thing, we need to encourage more Black and brown people to go into education and choose to teach in our communities.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a whole nother conversation, right?
Okay.
No, it isn't. No, I mean, it's realistic, right? We need, and I think more people are going to go into teaching, we hope. But right now, how are we going to deal with this crisis? Pastor Turner, can you just tell us a little bit about Light of Syracuse and what you envision that agency doing regarding education in our community, with some vision for what you're trying to do to help to provide a pipeline of young people who are prepared?
Well, what America has created for itself is an issue of socioeconomics. And they're taking steps to try to get rid of it in various ways. The worst one is they're trying to arrest it away, to put it in prison, because society doesn't know how to deal with it. And so what we have is a system that is not designed for people who have been oppressed. It's not designed for people who are trying to work their way out of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
It's not designed for people who are operating from the margins and are not considered mainstream from the very beginning. Okay, that means that the people who identify with that should be the educators, should lead the charge. Okay, all of us know that we have not been we're not in urban communities locked within a community of aged out buildings and all of that has been designed. We are in these communities because we have been forced into them and we have been relegated to live in these communities, and it's easy to control what comes in. All right. And so we're almost captive. So some of us have escaped. Some of us have gotten out. We're the ones should be teaching because we know the way, like Harriet, okay?
Mhm.
Like Harriet Tubman. We
Sure.
know the way. We understand oppression. We understand the limitations of opportunity, and we sure as heck understand poverty, okay? We know the issues that that child is coming to school with. If a child has a learning problem, we need to know that that emanates not from their intellect or their ability, that is circumstantial. All right. And if you've never dealt with it, you have no idea of how to relate to the student. All right. And if you don't have it, you just don't have it. All right. It's like trying to make a withdrawal where there's been no deposit.
Mhm.
Okay. And so now you're asking a teacher to do, and even though they may have the best intentions, you're asking them to do what they're not familiar with. They just aren't. And it has nothing to do with their desire to teach in some cases. It just has to do with their inability to relate. Okay. And that's the piece that all of us are talking about, in that this relationship, this connection between the student and the teacher, if it is non-existent, you can't make it up. All
Mm.
right. And so now we have the responsibility. And here's what we've learned over time, all of us. We've learned that there isn't, I don't care who we are, uh, uh, from the political arena or any other arena, we've learned by now that no one is coming to rescue the Black community.
Mm.
Okay. All right. That is a job that we have to do now. Okay. And some of us now know the way out. But we first of all can identify the place where people exist.
And so part of so Light of Syracuse wants to do a preschool
Yes.
and a pre-K and a
Yes, yes,
kindergarten,
yes. A daycare,
daycare.
preschool. We know that learning begins from you're learning from the womb to the tomb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we know that our students are sometimes entering the public school system with a less extent of vocabulary. They may be operating from a lower amount of experiences. They're being parented sometimes by people who have had a less than adequate education themselves. All right. And so the preparation to enter the school system is less than it should be. It's deficient. And so that's why we see this pivotal thing happening at the third grade, because at the third grade, all of the foundational pieces are supposed to be there. Because from now on, everything that you learn depends on how well you read. Okay, it depends on how well you read and how well you interpret, how well you function when you have to work a solution where the answer doesn't already exist. You have to know how to break things apart in pieces that you can put the whole answer together. But if you haven't learned how to develop an answer, you're doomed at the third grade. And we all know that the system now is determining how many jail cells they're going to need based on third grade performance. They are determining how many people will graduate based on third grade performance. And it is the pivotal moment in the child's academic journey when they begin to disengage. Okay, a person who drops out as a freshman in high school started disengaging at the third grade, sometimes even sooner. And then here's what the system lacks the ability to do. If a child enters the school system and they are performing at a subpar level, they are pigeonholed as either learning disabled or special ed. The system doesn't have an adequate way to work them out of that. Okay, so now their entire academic journey is spent in special ed, or they're marginalized in some other kind of way. So what do? if I'm not performing well in school, I'm agitated. Now I become a troubled student.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm angry. All right, I'm mad that the system doesn't work for me. Okay, I'm not fond of any of my teachers because all they do is to show up what I don't know, and they put it on public display. All right, so now I'm not even happy about school anymore. Okay, and so I'm already thinking about how I can do it another way by the time I get to the 9th grade and I'm reading on a 2nd grade level. Okay, and it as my wife has often told me, it takes 2 to 3 years to correct what 1 year of bad teaching
Wow.
has done to a student.
Correct.
So Reggie, what do we do? There's the problem. What do we do? Because these students were in your building, and, and let me also just put on the record that 100 Black Men is also trying to create. They're in the process of creating a charter school in the community. So you're trying to deal with it that way. But for the system that we have that's in place, Reggie,
Right.
what are we going to do about that? What
So
we going to do about that?
this is the answer. We have to give parents the knowledge that they need to, and so they understand. Parents have so much power, and parents need to understand that the school is their school. It doesn't belong to the principal, doesn't belong to the teachers. It is a community's school, and parents have the power. And when we're talking about our communities, we have to empower our parents and our caretakers with the knowledge they need so they can go in and know what is it that I'm supposed to see that's happening in this building. And if I don't see it, I'm going to hold your foot to the fire until I do see it. The parents have the power. So we have to make sure as those people on the fringes, we need to come in, empower our parents, empower those people in the community so they know what to ask for, what to expect, what kind of questions to ask, what information they need from the teacher. When they go to a parent conference, what is it that you need to share with me? All of those things.
Yeah, I'm going to use a phrase that Pastor Turner said, but those of us who have, quote, escaped know how to do that, right? And are doing that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how do we then free the folks? How do we you talk about empower, but I'm thinking about some pockets of the community where whether it's new immigrant or whether it's whatever the barrier is within those communities. I'm just going to say it that way. And so when I have all of these other things that are in front of me and now and I have to be on top of the kids and the parent conference and all of that, I'm trying to think how is that particular parent resourced in a community which has some of the highest poverty per capita in the country. Like, for example, right, when the school bus let's talk about transportation, right? We had a situation not too long ago where the bus system was changed, right? And the schedule was changed. And that meant that parents who have a particular work schedule couldn't get their kids to school who wanted to get their kids to school. So they had to Uber their kids and all of, because of a schedule change.
Right.
So I'm thinking, how do we, for some parents, they got it, but what about those who don't?
Well, I can just give you an example. When I was a principal in the state of Georgia.
And where were you principal so we can have context?
In Georgia, in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I was in a community, I had about 1,100 kids, elementary school. All my kids were Mexican. Most of my parents were undocumented. 98% of them did not speak English. So I'm not fluent in Spanish. So I had 2 full-time interpreters, translators that walked around with me all day. But what I quickly learned is because that community was marginalized and they were in a situation where they didn't trust anybody, I had to bring the resources to them. I had to bring in people from the Department of Family and Children's Services to let them know, yes, if you need food stamps, here, sign up for them. If your child needs health care, sign up for Medicaid. You know, it's not going to affect your immigration status, but you have to bring the resources to the parents. That's what I'm talking about. We have to empower them through bringing them the things that they need. And that takes organizations like 100 Black Men, the fraternities, my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, I think you're Omega Psi Phi, Alpha Phi, the sororities. We have to empower our communities through our community outreach. And that's going to help them get the information and the knowledge that they need to go and get what they want and advocate for their children. We have to teach the parents how to be advocates.
Yeah.
You want to say Drake?
No, I mean, he's absolutely correct. It's going to take an army to work with parents and to help, meet their needs. Reggie talked about training, we have to engage them because the parents have to trust us as well as the child, right? And if we don't get the parents, that's one of the things our organization talks about. If we don't engage and get the trust of the parents, we don't get the child.
But the city, let's talk about Syracuse City School District. They will say to you, we got all that. We got a parent thing, we got we got an after school, we got all that.
Yeah, no.
They'll say, that's what they say. All right, y'all got as soon as I said that, audience, all of them jumped up. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go Drake, Pastor Turner, and then Reggie, y'all go ahead.
Okay, so the school district, and like I said, we want to partner with the school district. Right. The school district does have all that. But
right. They'll say they got all of that. So right. Why isn't it working for everybody?
Because one size does not fit all.
Okay.
You have to come with different strategies and methodologies. The 100 brings that community, that grassroots to the table, right? We out there engaged because we're boots on the ground, right? And Reggie mentioned earlier, I think collectively, the fraternities, the sororities, the community centers, the 100 Black Men, as these organizations are addressing, I want to say various cohorts and pockets of the community, look what we could do if we work together collectively, right? And then if these very parents that we're trying to work with saw us working together collectively, that visual, becomes much more powerful and makes it much more easier for us to engage parents. Because what happens, they always see us do things, individually or kind of like in silo. What if we blew the silos up?
Right.
And said, you know what, we're going to take on one or two tasks, and then so that the community and the people that we serve can see us working together as a group.
Pastor Turner.
Yes, let me say one thing because Reggie touched on something that's really critical in terms of the parents, and all of this is just good food. But one of the requirements of our preschool is that the parent has to sign up with the child. The parent has to be prepared. The academic career of a child has to do with the support system. Okay, and so now you need to educate parents on how to hold school systems accountable. But then when you ask the question about what do we do about the system that we have now? Now, I'm just going to give you something real simple. It's a simple definition of insanity, is that you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. You have a system that has to be overhauled because it has to be dismantled because it doesn't work. And we keep hammering down the same nail that isn't moving. Okay, so now, just like the miseducation that everybody in America received, we're still struggling over that miseducation. All right, the miseducation on race, and the miseducation on even how America was supposedly discovered, and all of these things, you have to undo that education and give the true one. All right, so what we have to understand as a community is that this is going to be a heavy lift.
Yeah.
This is not, it has to be done with the long haul in mind. It's not going to be a snap of the finger. all right? And the whole thing is going to be turned around overnight. You know, we have to instill something that will still be operating even after me, Reggie, and Drake are no longer here.
Yeah.
When I came from Memphis, Tennessee, I came to Buffalo, New York. I was in the 4th grade. I came from a segregated school system. When I got to Buffalo, I was proficient. I was above, I was well prepared because the teachers in my school and the principals knew what I was going to have to face and knew how to prepare me. We were not allowed to speak in broken sentences. You had to speak an entire sentence from start to finish. We were not allowed to use dialect. You know, we couldn't say this and that, and we couldn't use profanity, and you could be punished. And I mean, not in a punitive way, but a way that says the principal spanked me, not in a way to hurt me, but do you know that the next day I did everything that I could to make sure that that principal didn't have to do that again, because I knew she cared for me. I knew what she was doing was not to beat me down. It was to bring me up. You're going to have to learn. My problem was, you know, I was dilly-dallying around and coming to school late almost every day. She met me at the door one morning and said, "Mister, you're going to be on time." All right. And I don't want to have to tell you this again. I did the same thing the next day. I came into school. She came from behind the door. She was waiting for me. She was waiting for me, and she spanked me with the belt. Now, it didn't hurt, but it woke me up. Because she was saying, you're going to have to get over this, because you can't have a successful journey in school or life not paying attention to time.
So I just wanted to jump in real quick. Pastor Turner has said some very pointed things. So let me just ask this question. Oh, you know, Pastor Turner spoke earlier about some of us have escaped. You know, we made it.
Right.
We understand what to do.
Some of us be free.
So the question is, how come, and I'm not saying, I'm just saying the collective us, how come we as a people who have made it and have success, our children have done well, how come we are not willing to do that for the larger family, for our larger family, which is the other kids? We all, you know, most of us have children who had the benefit of our parenting and have done well. They've gone to college, they succeeded, they've gotten jobs. Why don't we just take that same practice, if you will, and bring it to the larger community?
And you know what, Dwayne? I think that's a great question to leave on, because we will answer that question.
Yeah.
When we gonna answer that question, Reggie?
This Saturday.
November the 20th, with 100 Black Men, the Higher Learning Network, and the Bethany Baptist Church present the 2021 Education Summit, a conversation on education in Syracuse. An all-star panel begins at 11 o'clock. COVID protocols, I'm sure, will be observed. And you can also, there is a sign up. It's 11 to 149 Beatty Street this Saturday. I will be there. Holla. Yeah. I'm and working in partnership with the 100 Black Men of Syracuse. I'm partnering with them. I guess that's the way I got to say that. And so thank you to Drake Harrison, to Reggie Stevens, to Pastor Phil Turner. This is the beginning of the conversation, y'all. And I think we should start next week with Drake's with Drake's question. How come? or we'll put it in the mix somewhere. How come? Because we got Dr. Bernard Gassaway, we got Dr. Lester Young. Who's gonna be representing the Higher Learning Network, Reggie?
Both myself and Errol Bedford.
Errol Bedford, right? And who we've met on the show a couple of times already. 100 Black Men of Syracuse and Light of Syracuse Incorporated. So listen, I thank you, gentlemen, for a very spirited dialogue. The beginning of the conversation, the community, we need y'all to come up. Pastor Turner, are there capacity limits, for this conversation?
It appears that we'll probably have this in our fellowship hall. The capacity is 300. And so if we reach 50% capacity, 150 people, that would be a very successful event. All right. And that will give everybody plenty of space. And so what we're prayerful for is that we have to be concerned about that.
Right.
Because this is an issue of paramount importance.
Spread the word, tell a friend, share it on Facebook like you just don't, like it's a viral video.
Yeah.
Just share
Yeah.
and let's solve some issues. Let's talk about it. More importantly,
Yeah.
let's come away with a plan of action
Yeah.
that will help us to change the direction. Because what we didn't talk about in this conversation is the third rail, systemic racism and the need for diversity, equity, inclusion. We'll talk about that on Saturday, folks. We're going to talk about that because while that's a factor, you know what? We got to expose it all. So it's going to be a powerful conversation with some dynamic brothers on this panel, and we're looking forward to it. And we'll see you on Saturday. Inspiration for the Nation. Thank you again, Pastor Turner, Reggie Stevens, and Drake Harrison. Inspiration for the Nation.
Bless you, George.